Have you ever worried about your memory because it doesn't seem to be bringing you exactly the same picture of the past from one day to the next? Have you ever been afraid that your personality was changing because of forces beyond your knowledge or control? Have you ever felt sure that sudden death was about to jump you from nowhere? Have you ever been scared of ghosts? Not the storybook kind, but the billions of beings who were once so real and strong it's hard to believe they'll just sleep harmlessly forever. Have you ever wondered about these things you may call devils or demons? Spirits able to range through all time and space, through the hot hearts of stars and the cold skeleton of space between the galaxies. Have you ever thought that the whole universe might be a crazy, mixed-up dream? If you have, you've had hints of the Change War. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I am your host Liam, aka Hambar. Today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Fritz Leiber's The Big Time. The Big Time is a 1958 Hugo Award-winning novel by Grandmaster of Sci-Fi, Fritz Leiber. I will say that he is one of my favorite authors, so maybe take this with a grain of salt. But I did actually really enjoy this book. I did find one other video on YouTube when I looked before reading this book, and it kind of was negative. It starts with a punch, like a joke, and then there's no punchline because it actually describes the plot of this book. I think that is awesome. It's definitely not the type of sci-fi you would read today, and it's not even typical of a lot of the sci-fi of Leiber's contemporaries. About the story, I guess the Change War is a war waged throughout time, and space, but time more important here, as it takes place in the past and the future, and it really seems apparently to end a billion or so years in the distant future. There are two sides, the snakes and the spiders. The story is told by Greta Forzane of Chicago, and it's really about how this young woman got mixed up in the battle across time and space. She lives in the place, the capital P place, which is neutral. And I was honestly super impressed with this novel because it's almost all one big conversation in one room, and that's really it. It does have some interesting concepts like inversion, I think, and it seems really similar to eversion from Alistair Reynolds' latest novel. I wonder if he's read this. But anyways, the spiders support the West in our history, that is during the 20th century history, and the snakes support the East. This book is definitely a product of the Cold War, but I still think it stands up today, and it's not your typical sci-fi of today either, like I mentioned, which I think is honestly a bonus. We see things like extraterrestrials that have lived on the moon 1 billion years ago, which gives me very Sword and Planet vibes. Then we get a Roman, for example. We get a Nazi, and more colorful figures. And so it's kind of relatable, right? That you have Greta as the main character. She's telling it in first person, by the way, as well, because she is, from present day Chicago, and she's 29, so not super young, but not, old either. But she's telling us this story, and it recounts her job as a sort of nurse for the soldiers of the war. Her official title is entertainer, which also includes a type of psychology work, ethnology, and sex work for the soldiers. And the dialogue, I would say, is really well done, but this is something Leiber is just an expert at anyways. In any of the works I've read by him, there are lots of characters that are introduced rather quickly, and you kind of stick with these characters throughout this book because, like I said, it takes place in one little big conversation, however you want to describe it. There is a decent amount of German and a little bit of other languages included too. It's not really excessive, and it's often close to English. I feel like that you can parse it. But I'd say the dialogue, again, is good, and it's weird that the book is not just one big conversation, but it's also downtime. The action is during downtime, which is just cool that Leiber pulls it off. There's also a mystery portion of the novel, in fact, that plays a big part, but the novel is tiny. And I do think we get some good exploration, some of the characters' trauma and aspirations, and even a nod to alcoholism, of course. And this is not a flimsy time space. You need to do quite a lot to change the future. Also, the people taking part in the Time War seem to be resurrected beings, having died, at least that's what it seems like. They're called demons because of this, and doppelgangers because there seem to be copies of them. It's a little confusing. There are other Change War stories out there that I have not read yet, but I will definitely read those at some point. And I appreciate this story because we get Leiber showing his thoughtfulness, and I think he hides that really well, though, and just gives you an entertaining story. And you can also see well his theatrics of his acting knowledge, as Leiber was an actor, Shakespearean, and actually in film. You can watch some films with Leiber in them, which is pretty cool. Anyways, Liam Williams, guys, let me know if you've read this. Let me know if you want to read this. I'll catch you next time.